Welcome back to From the Bathroom Floor. My name is Frank, and this is episode 2. Last time, I talked about a generally exciting development in IBD treatment, a combination therapy showing real promise for people who've run out of options. And I ended up by saying there's something I wanted to get to this time, something that comes up almost without fail in every single conversation I have on my podcast. The gap between being in remission and actually feeling well. Those are not the same thing. And I think a lot of us have known this for years, in our bodies, but haven't had any doctor acknowledge. So today, that's what we're doing. Here's the thing that happens to a lot of people living with inflammatory bowel disease. You go through a flare. It's awful, painful. Maybe you're bleeding, you can't leave the house, maybe you're stuck in the hospital. And then you start a new medication, or you adjust the one that you're on. And slowly things improve, hopefully. You go back for your follow-up, your CRP is down, and your doctor hits you with a very encouraging word, remission. And you should feel relieved. Maybe you do feel relieved. But there's also this other feeling, one you might not want to say out loud, and that is, why don't I feel fine? I think it's because you're tired. Not the normal kind of tired. The kind of bone-deep fatigue that makes a full workday feel like running a marathon. If you're living with chronic illness, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You still have days where urgency might be a problem. You still wake up anxious about whether today is going to be a good day or a bad one. You might still planning your life around bathroom access, and you still can't eat certain things without paying for it dearly. But your markers look okay, so officially, you're in remission. Here's what the research actually says about this, and it's validating and infuriating at the same time. Up to 60% of people with IBD continue to experience symptoms even when they are in clinical remission. 60%. Now that's not a small number. You could argue that's the majority of us. And the symptoms aren't minor inconveniences either. Studies show that even in remission, almost 40% of IBD patients experience significant fatigue. Anxiety and depression are reported in up to 35% of people with IBD, even when the disease is supposedly under control. And those numbers go higher the longer you've been sick and the more medications you've cycled through. One piece of research I came across put it really well. It described IBD care as being built around a binary, flare or remission, when the reality is that there's a huge gray zone in the middle. People who don't meet the threshold for an active flare, but whose disease is also not controlled in any meaningful sense. Symptoms are persisting, confidence is eroding, and the quality of life is declining, all while the clinical markers still look acceptable. But acceptable to who? And that's my question. Now, part of what makes this so hard is the language, I think. Remission is a powerful word. It sounds like the end of something. It sounds like recovery. And when your specialist uses it, there's this implicit message, sometimes spoken, but sometimes not, that the hard part is over, that you should be feeling better, that now you can get on with your life, or back to your life. And so when you don't feel better, when you're still exhausted, still anxious, still not living the life you want to live, there's nowhere to put that. You start wondering if it's all in your head, if you're being dramatic, if everyone else with IBD managed to get their life back after remission, and you're the only one who didn't. The reality is, you're not. Research from the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation looked at exactly this gap between how patients define remission and how doctors define it. And what it found was consistent. Patients tend to define remission as feeling well. And that means no symptoms, good energy, and being able to live a normal life. Doctors often define it by biomarkers, by what they see in a scope, or by inflammation scores. These two definitions don't always overlap. And when they don't, patients are often left feeling like they're failing at being in remission. In a sense, and I want to say this clearly, that's completely backwards. The system is failing to measure what matters to you. You are not failing the system. Remember that. So where does this leave us? I don't want to just sit here and vent. I want this to actually be useful. So let's talk about a couple of things. First, if you are in clinical remission and you do not feel well, that's a legitimate medical concern. Fatigue, anxiety, ongoing gut symptoms, or poor quality of life, these are not just the cost of having IBD. They are things your care team should be addressing. So bring them up. Write them down before your appointment if you have to, because the short time with your specialist goes by very fast, and it's easy to walk out having only talked about your blood work or your symptoms. Second, the fact that you feel this way does not mean that your medication isn't working or that you're in desperate need to change your treatment right now. Sometimes the inflammation is generally controlled, and the fatigue is its own separate issue. There's real emerging understanding of what's called IBD-related fatigue as a distinct condition, not just a symptom of active disease. It deserves its own conversation and its own treatment approach. And third, and this I think matters most than others, stop measuring your recovery against some imaginary version of yourself that feels completely normal. A lot of us have been sick for a long time, and our nervous systems have been through a lot. Our mental health has certainly taken a lot of hits. Remission is not a finish line where everything resets. For a lot of people, it's more like a lower floor or a better starting point. And building from there takes time and support, and the kind of honesty that the IBD community is actually really good at when we let ourselves have it, which is sort of why I started this show. And that's episode 2 of From the Bathroom Floor. If this one hit close to home, I'd love to hear from you, because I think this is one of the most under-talked about realities of living with inflammatory bowel disease. And the more we say it out loud, the less alone everyone feels. Next time, I want to talk about something that almost never comes up in GI appointments, but affects basically everyone with IBD at some point: the workplace. How do you handle disclosure? What are you actually entitled to? What do you do when your manager doesn't get it? Or worse, when your colleagues think you're making it up because you look fine? There's a lot to talk about there. My name is Frank, and this is From the Bathroom Floor. If you're new here, please subscribe to the show and tell someone who needs to hear this. We'll talk next time. For more inspiring stories about IBD, follow us at Colitis Unfiltered on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Threads, and Reddit. And listen to our other podcast, Colitis Unfiltered, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube.